Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special live edition of Control Alt Debate. I'm your moderator, James Fortune. Tonight, I'm getting feedback. I'm getting feedback. And
That
tonight,
was me.
we're, I'm getting feedback. So, we're tackling one of the most explosive stories in music and entertainment, the federal RICO trial of Sean Diddy Combs. This case has been everything's like celebrity power, allegations of racketeering and sex and trafficking, and a courtroom drama that has the world just watching every day. Everybody's glued to their monitors and their phones. And I'm joined by our powerhouse cast, Miss Sandra Faye, my boy Logix, and my beautiful wife Bernadette Fortune. Each of us bringing a sharp perspective. And tonight, I want us to dig deep, not just into the headlines, but into the legal culture and the personal dynamic at play here. All right. So I want us to have a really good conversation. So let's set the stage for our listeners who might be catching up and they might not be, ready for, what we're about to deliver. But we're gonna really bring y'all the truth here. All right. So just a recap, a quick recap. The trial began with allegations that Diddy use his influence to coerce women into freak offs, and that's going to be mentioned a lot tonight. Freak offs, Dr- drug fueled sex parties over nearly 2 decades. This man has been running this scam or this scheme. So the prosecution RICO case hinges on whether these acts were isolated incidents or part of a criminal enterprise. So that's what the RICO stands at. Testimony has included graphic allegations from Cassie Ventura and others, video evidence of violence and stories involving celebrities like Kid Cudi. The defense argues that these were consensual relationships rooted in jealousy, love, and money, not organized crime. Both sides agree this is a complex case, and the verdict could set a precedent for how we view power and accountability in the entertainment industry. All right. So again, you have me, James Fortune. We have Sandra Logix. I don't know if I'm pointing right, and my beautiful wife Bernadette. Thank you all for being here. I am going to guide us through each major day of the trial. So for each day, I'll throw out a recap, and then we'll kind of ask a few questions, and yeah, and go from there. So let's keep it real, keep it respectful, and don't be afraid to challenge each other. All right, or me.
Alright,
Don't be afraid to challenge me either. All right.
alright.
So, so real quick, y'all feeling good? Everybody's feeling good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm
Awesome,
feeling
awesome,
great.
We in
awesome.
here.
He's feeling amazing. Got you, got you. All
You got some
right.
libations.
So, so real quick, I already have the question structured for who to get the first question. So, answer the question. Feel free to, if you feel like you need to a rebuttal, please jump in. But I'm not going to let it get too crazy where the conversation get lost. All right.
Gotcha.
So with that being said, day one, opening statements and everything, and first testimonies. That's kind of what we're gonna we're going into. So the prosecution focused on two main accusers, which is Cassie Ventura and a person named Jane, alleging orchestrated the freak-offs as part of a criminal enterprise. Video evidence of Combs assaulting Cassie was shown to the jury. The defense admitted to domestic violence, but argued that this is about love and jealousy and money and not RICO. So, Sandra, do you think the prosecution has made a compelling case that this rise to the level of RICO conspiracy, or does it feel more like an individual bad act?
Well, the one thing that I'm confused about was the only person I'm seeing on trial is Diddy, right? Have they charged anybody else in this?
Not from my understanding. I don't think there's anybody else being tried.
How you get a RICO by yourself? That's what I'm wondering. Every RICO case I've heard of is a bunch of people getting charged. So this is the first RICO I've heard of where it's one individual doing a RICO by themselves. So that's the part that I'm confused of. I feel like the system might be protecting some people in this situation. I'm not talking about Cassie though. We'll probably get into that a little bit deeper, but I do think that there are other people that should be getting prosecuted alongside Diddy because I mean, if you're gonna do a RICO, I'm gonna need you to get the organization, okay? Um, but as far as like them creating a compelling case, I feel like they have, okay? Once you talk about the, trafficking, okay, I'm gonna try to keep it YouTube friendly, the trafficking. The evidence seems to be there. You can't fly people out for the purpose of giving them money or gifts in return for actions. Okay, that's illegal, and just based off of the fact that there's evidence of that proves the trafficking side of it. And then as far as the coercion, once you have evidence of people getting threatened, even the video of Cassie trying to leave and him keeping her there, by grabbing her phone, grabbing her things, that's considered kidnapping. That's also coercion for her to stay and be involved. And because she was involved in his business in a way, it doesn't look good. I think that he's gonna go away, not because he's a freaky Nick, not because he's freaky, but because of the other things.
Okay, all right. I definitely can agree with you on a lot of that, and I think maybe even all of us agree with that. How do you feel about that, Bernadette? You have anything to add or take away from that?
Yeah, so RICO is an umbrella term. It's used to prosecute organizations and the leaders of those organizations if they benefited from the criminal activity. But it's an umbrella term where they try to group everything in as trafficking, drugs, anything else that they can find that they can prosecute. They just say RICO. That way they can throw up a bunch of stuff up there. And they throw a bunch of stuff against the wall is to see what sticks. Okay. Now, do I think that Diddy is going to walk? Possibly. I don't think. I think that he is guilty of a few things. Yes. Was the question? Do I think Cassie was involved, or what was the other question? The other part of the question.
Oh, how do you feel about this overall, about the RICO and where it stands?
I feel like the only reason he's up there on trial is because he went against the wrong people. Okay. I feel like this started amazingly after he went against a liquor company, and all of a sudden now these charges, because this has been going on for decades. Anybody that has followed Bad Boy and Diddy's story knows that these things have been going on since at least the 90s. Okay. So a lot of the stuff that he's doing is not something he just started doing. So a lot of people have known about his business ventures and the things that he's done. I think that the only reason that Diddy is sitting in that courtroom is because there are people on high that do not like what he did. He's getting too big for his britches, and they want to teach him a lesson. And this is a humiliation ritual. So,
Okay, now we going back to the rituals and shit. So okay, I mean, it is what it is. I'm with you 1,000%. All right, so Logics, where do you draw the line between personal misconduct and I'm assuming what they call organized criminal activity under the law?
So I guess in simpler terms, you basically saying like, where's the line between like he's doing something wrong on his own versus making it like an enterprise? That's what you're saying.
Is that exactly
I'm still,
is this something that can be considered more of a personal situation or a criminal enterprise situation?
I guess as far as we at now, that part I am still unsure of. Just like Sandra was saying, like, how is this a RICO and nobody else is being charged? But I think that I do think what she said and what, I'm sorry, Bernadette. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bernadette said they kind of go hand in hand because she said, well, why isn't anybody being charged? My guess is that them motherfuckers told. And that's why he's there now. And to tie into what Bernadette said about him getting too big for his britches, I think that I don't know as much about the De Leon situation, but I think that just like R. Kelly, motherfuckers know what you've been doing for a long time. Whoever you crossed, whatever went wrong, something went wrong, and now everybody's flipping on you. And I think that's just what happened. I like you said, like a lot of this shit ain't brand new to us with Diddy. Just like R. Kelly, the shit wasn't brand new. It didn't pop up. So I don't know who the people are, but somebody got crossed. And I do think that there was other people involved. And I don't know why it's still called, or they're still doing it under the RICO when if those people flip, they're not being charged. And I don't know how that's going to play out. But if I'm not mistaken, I heard something about like he got people to figure out a way to buy his stuff and not make it look like a transaction under Bad Boy or under his businesses or whatnot. So I guess that's where the record, the enterprise could come into play.
So when you say stuff, are you meaning like drugs, guns,
baby
sex,
oil, heels, all the shit we saw in them pictures, all that shit. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how do you feel about what he's stating, Bernadette? Do you feel like that maybe everybody flipped on him and we don't know that, or do you just?
I mean, yeah, yes, in a sense, I do think, people did flip on him. I think that Diddy has worn out a lot of his corporate friends. For me, he was the face of Ciroc. Everybody thought he owned Ciroc. He was promoting Ciroc like it was, he's taking it everywhere. And he pretty much built the brand. You know what I'm saying? He built the brand, but everybody knows that the liquor industry is sort of it's ran by a mafia. Okay. If anybody's watched The Godfather, you know how they move. I mean, whatever they're involved in, you can't, you don't cross certain lines with them. So for him to start his own brand, De Leon, and promote it in direct competition with the people that whose brand he actually built, and think he's going to do something with it, it was a direct slap in the face. And to me, that's what it looked like to me. I'm just saying what it looked like, okay? And I think at that point, people that knew how Diddy was moving, obviously behind the scenes, flipped on him. I think that's when Cassie's allegations started. I think that's when, once Cassie opened that door, then it opened up floodgates for other people to come through and say, hey, he did this to me. He did this. That's how it always works. That's how it worked with Bill Cosby. That's how it worked with R. Kelly. Once one person opens that door, they're going to send a bunch of people flying in. And from what it looks like, there's no real, what is it called when, there's a certain date that you can't file this anymore. I don't know why it's slipping my mind.
Statute of limitations.
Statute
of limitations. There's no real statute of limitations on what they're accusing him of. Okay. So you're just going to have this whirlwind of people. You have Danity Kane coming in, or Dawn from Danity Kane. You have, all these people saying what they know about Diddy. Obviously he built a bunch of, he built bad relations. I don't want to say bad, but he had a lot of people that disliked him, for whatever reason.
Right.
Maybe they worked for him, maybe they, maybe he crossed them in some kind of way. But
so now that you're on that, so I guess my next question is to you anyways, Bernadette. How much do you think personal motives versus how much is personal motives versus criminal intent should be factored into a RICO case overall?
They're going to try, the defense is going to try to prove, personal motives with some of this, because a lot of stuff that they have, a lot of the evidence that they have, is they have videotapes apparently, they have evidence on the, on the scene evidence, things like that. But a lot of the stuff that's coming through, like for instance, Dawn, with Danity Kane, that looks to be like he say, she say, or maybe, your career didn't go anywhere. Maybe you saw something, maybe you're exaggerating. It's been a long time, so maybe your career didn't go anywhere. So now, you want to come back and say, it's Diddy's fault that your career didn't go anywhere. You have a lot of people coming out that used to work for Diddy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, there could be personal motives for some of them, because obviously, when all of this was going on, what did you do? Where were you? Why,
I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
Why you didn't tell, why you didn't come forward then, And so a lot of these people I feel were caught up in the lifestyle, including Cassie, and I don't want to seem like I'm not compassionate to what she went through, but I think a lot of it was it was a choice. You wanted the lifestyle, you got the lifestyle, and you got what came with it. Now people are coming forward and saying, hey, this is what happened, but you're not saying it happened to you. You're saying secondhand and third hand, what you saw, what somebody told you, or something like that. The only people that can really say it happened to them firsthand so far, from what we're seeing, is Cassie. Everybody else so far as, I heard this, or, she told me that, or whatever.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so let's just move on to day two, Cassie's testimony and the RICO allegations overall. So pretty much Cassie testified about years of abuse, forced sex acts, and alleged that Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car out of jealousy. The defense cross-examined Daniel Phillip, a male escort paid to have sex with Cassie. The prosecution claims that Combs ran a racketeering operation for nearly 20 years. So, uh, Bernadette, this question is back on you. How credible and relevant do you find these allegations? And let's try to make sure we don't go into too much of a spiel, but try to get your point across.
With the Kid Cudi. So
No, yeah. How credible and relevant do you find these allegations when it comes to the federal, pretty much the federal charges that he's facing right now? With the impact, do you think that they have any sway on the
yeah,
jury?
they got a lot of shit. I think we haven't seen what they have yet. I don't think anybody has. Cassie had to testify because I feel because she's pregnant. They didn't want her to, be drawn out. She's about to have a baby, so I mean, they had to get her up there, and he wanted a speedy trial, so they had to let her go first because she's like 8 months pregnant or something like that. But I really don't think we've heard the gist of what the prosecution actually is going to throw out there. I think there's going to be a lot more evidence to show that there was some trafficking. I mean, we know about Young Miami. I mean, I think that came kind of later when they actually were raiding his homes, and there were the stories about Young Miami putting stuff on a plane,
Mhm.
all of that stuff. So I feel like we haven't heard everything yet. That's all. I just feel like we haven't heard anything yet.
Sandra,
But
how do you feel about that?
So uh as far as everything that's gone on so far, I feel like um I feel like it's a mixture of both personal vendettas, but they're linked to the issues at hand. So it's like if someone is coercing you into doing something, you're gonna have a personal feeling about that. I mean, it's
Good
insane
point.
to have this idea that, oh, it's not gonna be personal, it's just a business thing. No, if someone's doing that to you, yes, it will be a personal vendetta. And one thing that I kind of wanted to say to one of Bernadette's points about, like, why didn't you come forth? If I know this mofo is out here unaliving people because they're doing things or beating folks or, just turning the machine, because once at that point in time, he was a part of the machine, right? So he had the power to, ruin your career, had the power to ruin your name, your credibility, all of that. Then yeah, these people would not come forth. So once Cassie opened that door, it allowed them to feel safer coming forth and telling their story, because once we saw that footage from the hotel, that already showed a lot of people about his personality. Okay, it
yeah,
showed a lot of people about what he's capable of. And so once that door is open, then people that felt afraid of Diddy felt like, okay, now I can come forth because I'll have some kind of security. I'll have some kind of backing, because if I tell my story, they can refer back to what they've already seen him do and be like, you know what? It is possible that what you're saying is true.
So, Sandra,
So I feel like, yeah.
no, so
Yeah.
just based off of what you said people didn't come forward because they was afraid of getting unalived. There hasn't been any real evidence that he has unalived anyone. So, is this a assumption or subjective approach, or are you linking this back to the Tupac and Biggie Smalls situation?
Well, not just that, Kim Porter. There's a lot of talk about how she
But
had
it's just
so much,
talk.
but here's the thing though. Because we're not in there, I'm gonna suspend belief and say that there's a possibility that these folks could have felt afraid for their lives. Even if you think about the Kid Cudi situation, his car exploding. I mean, that's some gangsta ass shit. I mean, like that's some mafia type shit. I would be afraid, okay?
All right.
So, when it and even just him beating the way he was beating Cassie ass, I'm like, I would not want a nigga kicking me in the face,
And if I,
and even then they showed a picture of Cassie, and she had her eyebrow was
that
busted open
gash
like
was
that woman in the
nasty.
yeah, it was almost like that woman in that fight from the night Mike Tyson fought Jake Paul. That woman she
yeah.
got
Oh
clocked in
yeah,
the face.
that was the
Her
same gash. Yep.
her stuff was split. It looked like that. So I can, whether or not these are founded beliefs, I will suspend belief and be like, you know what? It's possible that he has something to do with Kim Porter. It's possible that he has something to do with the Biggie Tupac situation. It's very much so possible. So I can understand why somebody would be afraid, especially if you're close enough to him to know that there might be more validity to this because you have more access. So I'm willing to give them that. I'm willing to give them that. As far as like why they wouldn't come forth, because I know I probably wouldn't have came forth. You ain't finna unalive me.
Logic. I know you had something you wanted to add to that real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I'm not mistaken, I may be jumping the gun because I know you said you was on day 2, but didn't Cuddy just come out and say like Diddy broke into his house before his car got blew up? Like,
yeah, I mean, it was part of the testimony that when we're going to get to the Kid Cudi situation here a little bit, but no, that's a good point though, due to the fact that these things have been mentioned in the media, but I'm still not sold myself on the fact that he's guilty of what they're saying he's guilty of at this moment. I still think we need a little bit more to go on before we really just lock into that he's guilty of a RICO. Because I'm right now I'm seeing a domestic violence case. But moving forward, does the involvement of these third parties like the escort, hotel staff, etc., does that strengthens the prosecution's RICO case or argument, or does it muddy the waters a little bit when it comes to this situation?
I feel like if they're not bringing people up on charges, then it muddies it. Okay. If you're saying that the hotel had involvement in these and they're kind of turning a blind eye, which is part of, if aiding and abetting, if they're doing that, then they need to be, whoever's in charge of that needs to be put on charges. So, unless they're going to do that, then I do think that it muddies it, because then you can paint the picture of, well, y'all are just going after this black man. Y'all are just going after him because he has money, and y'all mad because he's black and has money. So, until they start, I need them to bring up those charges on everybody involved. Okay. I need them to start putting up charges. If you're saying that the hotel was involved in covering things up and hosting things, the manager, whoever the hell, bring them up on charges and include them in the RICO.
Okay, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. Lodges, what evidence would you need to see to be convinced that this was a coordinated criminal enterprise and not just the actions of a powerful man, a troubled individual? Like, what would we need to see in this case?
I I can't. I can say what I need to see, but I just feel like a lot of judgment being passed after how many days we have? 5 maybe max.
No, we're on day 8. I think we're on day 8.
Like they've been in court for 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my bad.
So
yeah, 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I mean, and they have 8 weeks set. So we could be seeing all these people testify that we mentioned it. You know what I'm saying? It's possible. I don't know. But for me, what I need to see personally to think that it actually is a enterprise is like people that worked for him saying that I did this. You know what I'm saying? Receipts for transactions underneath his businesses, stuff like that. So because we know Diddy's not walking into Target and buying 50 bottles of baby oil. So you know what I'm saying? So somebody's doing this shit for him, and they're not doing it without understanding why they're doing it. Also, this is minor, and I can't necessarily say it's an enterprise, but having guns with serial numbers scratched off is crazy to me. Like I don't see Diddy. Point. I don't see Diddy himself. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just kind of crazy to me. There's people working with this, and like I said, depending on how vital they are to whatever he was doing, I don't know how much I care about them being charged if it gets him charged for making them do it. You know what I'm saying? I just have to know how much of a role they played before I could be like, yeah, all y'all go to jail. Because I do know. I'd rather him go to jail because them motherfuckers probably can't ever do it again, is if it gets him in jail. But if it's possible to charge them motherfuckers, do it too.
No, jump in. Go ahead. Jump in there.
Point into Sandra's point about people doing things for Diddy, and Sandra brought up that people were afraid. You know what I'm saying? People were afraid for their lives. I mean, this has been something that's been going around since the '90s, that Diddy was this powerful guy that will have you unalived. if you crossed him. And that was a well-known reputation. And as a matter of fact, I was just listening to one of his assistants that came out today and was basically stating how he was going around buying baby oil. He was like a cleanup person. Like not only was he an assistant, but he was going around buying baby oil on the on a corporate card, because each of them had a card. He was buying a lot of the stuff for the, freak offs, the whatever. And then he was cleaning up afterwards. Okay. Because he's, according to him, working for Diddy was like the Harvard of this entertainment shit. So if you come from a humble background and you work your way up and then you end up working for Diddy, this is like the ultimate, work experience. You're going places if you work for Diddy. So that's how he felt. So he was willing to do anything. He was willing to, clean up, buy things, make phone calls, whatever. But he said the buck stopped with him when he couldn't live with himself after the things that he saw in terms of Cassie. How he was treating Cassie, how he was beating on her and all this kind of stuff. So that was something that came up with one of his assistants. But how many people say that? Diddy had Making the Band. We all saw Making the Band. We all saw how he treated his assistants. We all saw how he, it was right there on camera, how he treated his talent. But the assistant also said that
before
maybe
before you go into your whole runoff, your spinoff, we got to make sure we keep it. No, I do agree with what you're saying. There is a lot of evidence here that will point to him being guilty of a lot of stuff, but just being a mean ass person is not a crime, right? Yeah, maybe some civil stuff, but not prison time on or RICO. So we do have some
drugs in them. I mean, where do we get the drugs from? I mean, they said they were flying Ciroc bottles with liquid cocaine, in the Ciroc bottle. So I believe all of this is going to come out.
Listen, it could very much so come out. That's why I only want to focus on the stuff we're talked about in court, and not the stuff that we hope that they talk about in court, right? So we do have some free Diddy supporters in the chat, which free Diddy, hey, free Diddy. If you believe this,
it's just funny.
Hey, I'm just stating.
I know.
Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. He has been charged, but he has not been prosecuted. Big difference. Yeah. Let me ask all of y'all this real quick before we move on. If the verdict come back that Diddy is innocent, even after you hear everything that you think you're going to hear about the Ciroc bottles and the liquid ice or the prostitution and the flying and all of it, would you still look at him as a guilty criminal or just a freaky ass nigga? Just want to know that.
I mean, I can't look at him the same after what I saw he did to Cassie, and that's a crime, but the statute of limitations passed.
True, but I'm saying, but okay, if we're going to be totally honest, just the honesty of the question, it's simple, yes or no. Would you look at him as a criminal or not? If he got off, if the verdict came back not guilty, would you still look at him as a criminal as they're painting him to be now? Not a villain, not a mean person, not a domestic violence, but a criminal.
That's why I answered the way I did. He's still a criminal because he did commit a crime on camera, but he just couldn't be found guilty of it. That's why I say that. But as far as everything else, I would probably just let it go. He's just a freaky ass nigga after that.
Okay. All right. What about you, Sandra?
I would still see him as a criminal. Okay. I don't care if he gets off or not. The same way I still see Zimmerman as a criminal. Okay. I refuse to allow stuff like that to just, roll off the chin. He'll just be a free criminal, just like a lot of these politicians are criminals, but they get to walk around free. My opinion won't matter in that. And it won't matter, but that's how I'll see him. I'll still see him as a criminal because ain't no way, boy.
What about you, Bernadette?
I fucking see him as a criminal.
I didn't expect that answer, honestly.
I didn't. After everything she been saying, I didn't expect for her to say that.
Me either.
Nah, I mean, it ain't got nothing to do with him. I'm looking at the chat. Oh, of course he's black and all of that. Listen, that ain't got shit to do with it because he's hurt other black people. So I'm trying to figure out what are you talking about in the chat.
That part.
You're dealing with a person that has ruined careers, stopped careers. Two of our best probably rappers, prolific rappers of our generation are gone.
Allegedly by the hands of
I
Diddy.
ain't even gonna talk about
Allegedly.
Craig Mack. I ain't gonna talk about what happened to Craig Mack and Mace, and all these
Mace,
people that have
yes.
these same stories about Diddy. You know what I'm saying? So where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't care what anybody says. A lot of the stuff that happened during the raid, and a lot of the stuff going on the internet, my Young Miami, and all the stuff that was said about her, and all the shit she was. These are criminals. These are people that are exploiting Black women. This is a man that's exploiting women, period, but it's specifically Black women.
All right, we got to move on, but I appreciate you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna need y'all to pipe down in the chat. Okay.
Bernadette,
I ain't gonna lie, Bernadette. I feel like these is trolls. These people seem like trolls.
Hey, Bernadette, I'm gonna need you to scoot a little closer to the camera and stop moving so much because it's kind of starting to blur your camera. I just want to make sure.
Oh, my bad.
Right. No problem. So let's move on. All right. Day 4, coercion and relationship dynamics. Cassie's testimony pretty much included claims of rape, threats, jealousy involving celebrities like Michael B. Jordan, and dispel rumors about drug-laced baby oil. The defense highlighted her continued expression of love and willingness to participate in freak-offs. So, Bernadette, how much do these personal dynamics matter in a federal criminal trial to you, and could they distract from the core legal issues?
As far as the freak offs, and how much do I think that all plays into the federal? Is that the question?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
I don't think it does. I think what comes in is were drugs administered, at these freak offs unwillingly, by to the participants, or were the participants willing participants? It's not just about having a freak off. Is were these people videotaped without their knowledge? Were they drugged? Were they R-worded? That type of thing. That's what plays into it. Okay, because people are saying, oh, he's just a freaky ass dude. No, well, yeah, but that's not all of it. Okay?
I mean, sperm on the titties is a bit freaky. It's a bit freaky. So now that we're speaking about the freak offs, right? It kind of makes a lot more sense when Young Miami come out and say she doesn't mind being peed on. I mean, it aligns with Cassie's story, right? I mean, she came out and openly said this on her show that Diddy gave her, Carisha, and said, I don't mind being peed on. She's a freak like that. Well, this kind of starts to build.
She said she liked it.
Yeah, she said she liked it. So this starts to, build a dynamic that he's this type of person that likes his women to be this freaky, which is not a crime. It's not. But I do see that there could be a silver lining in where the lines got crossed. But this is a man who got away with supposedly killing Biggie Smalls and Tupac less than 3 months apart. And he's going to go to jail for being a freak? I mean, sometimes you fall, your fall from grace is not the fall that you expect. It may be something like this. So
I don't think he's not going to jail for being a freak. Like I do think this is, like I said, this is an 8-week trial, and they're laying down the foundation for his pattern of behavior.
I definitely agree with that.
They're not using the video as any evidence. We can X the video. They show photos of Cassie fucked up. It's probably no other explanation for why she's fucked up. We see all the shit he has. Even for people that like sex, that's not fucking normal. So, and then you got the escorts coming in saying all these men and with the Punisher and shit. Like, these motherfuckers then came and wore out Diddy and wore out Cassie and shit. And it's like the fact he's getting charged with prostitution, soliciting prostitution and then transporting them for it. I think that's signed and sealed at this point. If I'm not mistaken, that part is done. I think the only part that's sus is the RICO part. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part I'm still like, when we gonna get to other people contributing to this happening? Because the sex workers themselves aren't the ones. And then I don't know if Cassie has immunity or not, but she
probably.
Yeah, and I don't know how that plays out if she can prove that she was being coerced or not. So that's a whole different situation. But I mean, to be honest, I think people are they're slipping and sliding in the baby oil, and they're forgetting what's happening, that he's being charged for transporting prostitutes, which has been laid out. And we're only on day 8, as y'all said. So
All right. So we got AJ Parker here saying, man is facing life and y'all proof is some YouTube videos. This is nuts. So
who had proof of YouTube?
What?
YouTube videos are covering the
He's
trial.
shadow boxing. He's shadow
That's what I'm
boxing.
saying. Like, nobody said. Okay, to be fair, I'm not saying y'all got y'all info from YouTube videos, but it's because y'all keep throwing out Biggie, Pac, and Kim Porter when there's no proof of that. Now, I don't know why he's saying it's YouTube videos, but there's no proof of those things, but y'all using them as
I said allegedly.
Yeah, that's what I do think. I agree. I think all that shit is weird, but I just won't make that claim. But I do think it's a lot of weird shit around Diddy. So.
Yeah, a lot of dead.
Well, the reason why I brought that up is to that point of being afraid for your life. Because if I'm thinking that that's a possibility, and there's a lot of other people that believe that that was a possibility as well, then he becomes a boogeyman, right? So that would speak to that idea that he's somebody to be feared. So it's not to say that, oh, he definitely did that shit. I don't know, but if a lot of people are walking around thinking that he did, then what type of image does that create for him?
Because you would think he would be trying to fight
mafioso.
That. Yeah, he's not. It's like he's
it
never
creates that
strayed away from
mafioso
that
type
shit.
of position. Exactly. It never.
He embraced it and loved being thought of like that, because then you wouldn't cross. A lot of people wouldn't cross him.
So,
Exactly.
Sandra, what challenges do you think the prosecution face in proving coercion and criminal intent when the relationship was clearly complex? Like, you think it's going to be hard for them to prove that?
Question.
I feel like it does become very difficult because you're dealing with DV as well. Because like oftentimes, and this is the part that gets under my skin the most, is that you got a lot of people out here loud and proud and wrong because they have no understanding of psychology. They have no understanding of domestic violence victims. They have no understanding of age gap and how that affects, or power dynamics. They don't understand any of it. And they're like, well, oh, well, Cassie, she liked it, because they see text messages because of her, saying that she likes to do things, or saying this, that, and the third. But it's just like Stockholm syndrome is a real thing. Being abused can cause you to.
So you believe this could be a part of some psychological, malfunction in her ability to make choices since she's been under this, this situation for so long?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Think about it like this. She came into the game when she was 19. She was a baby. Okay. She was 19 years old, and she started off dating somebody that was much older than her and introducing her to different things. And the part that the part that be so funny about it is the same people that are making these crazy claims about Cassie, saying, well, she wanted it, this, that, and the third. They will be the same folks that'll say, oh, older men want younger women. Why? Because they're malleable, because you can turn them into what you want them to be. They're the same ones who say that that's the reason why older men like younger girls. So then why are we not understanding that the dynamic between Diddy and Cassie is exactly that? She was malleable. He was able to form her because she was so young. And so being introduced to so many crazy things, the baby oil, full of baby oil. Like, it doesn't shock me that she was part of it. It doesn't shock me that she was reaching out to, prostitutes and doing a part of this, because it's that exact dynamic that these older men ask for. Get you a young girl so you can train her to be what you want her to be. And that's exactly what it seems like Diddy did to Cassie when she was a young girl. So that makes sense why she would be doing certain things. And once you're exposed to crazy amounts of trauma, that psychological damage is inevitable. Okay, that psychological damage is inevitable. So of course you're going to see text messages going back and forth because of the cognitive dissonance. It's like, in one hand, you're like, I know that this is wrong and something's wrong here. But in the other hand, you're in love with this person. You trust this person. You want to please this person. You want to make them happy. And so, yes, you're going to see text messages speaking to both points, but that doesn't mean that she was, you know, inherently just wanting to be in the freak offs and she wanted everything and all of that. Just insane to me.
All right, thank you for that. It was very, very enlightened, statement that you made. And again, I know we've talked about these things ourselves in the past about older men dating younger women, but again, I don't always think that it's out as it comes off as um, every girl is malleable, or at that point, it's one of those situations where everybody is in it for a negative outcome to control women or to mold them into what they want to be. But I do think you made some great points there. So with that being said, Logix, how do you weigh consent versus coercion in a long-term relationship, especially when, fame and power is involved, at that point?
I mean, I think some people forget that consent can be revoked at any time. Like, I think a lot of people forget that. They be like, we together, we in a relationship, you was down in, you ain't, you always gonna be that. That shit don't work like that. It just can't. And it's something that could be hard to prove. You know what I'm saying? Like, just people, like she said, they was talking about them texts with Cassie. Like, if anybody has took the time to watch like murder docs and shit, and people that are a part of cults and have been kidnapped as children, these people go out with these people and hold their hand and shop with them and laugh with them and kick it with them, but they're still trapped with this person. And they don't it's hard to rationalize if you've never been through it, but it fucking happens. So it's just kind of like this level of ignorance and hubris at the same time to act like people just can't be in situations where they have very little control. And I think that when people hear that you're 18, you're an adult, they think like, shit, your decisions, whatever the fuck you had, whatever you did, that's on you. In a sense, yes. But when you got somebody that's 17 to 19 years your senior, leading and in Hollywood or the music world, shit, Cassie stood no chance. I mean, and then to be fair, Cassie wasn't gonna be a big artist. So somebody that's like thirsty for it, and you know that you probably not gonna be Beyonce, you gonna put up with some shit. And I don't know where that line gets drawn of Cassie wanted to do it or she was put in a position to where she thought she wanted it or had to feign wanting it. I don't, it's hard I don't know, but I think that if we just look at from the start of her career to where she ended up, I don't think it's unreasonable to just think that Cassie was taken advantage of. It's just, I don't think it was mostly
even
consent.
if you look at her contract. Yeah. Even if you look at her contract, 10 albums.
Yeah, hold on, Sandra.
Insane.
And y'all made some great points. Y'all definitely made some great
Cassie
points.
And Cassie bad too. That's why. Shit.
Yeah.
Let her go.
All right, so we got to keep it moving because I know we on a time constraint with Logix tonight. So Bernadette, I'm gonna give you a quick second to chime in on this and give us your perspective on this as well. How do you feel? When is this consent or coercion?
Like 7:45, bro. Sorry, 7:45.
All right.
As much as I want to feel that Cassie's a victim, I don't. And I'm gonna tell you why. And I think that Sandra is on point with younger women are malleable. Okay, that is true. But in this respect, Cassie got into the relationship. From what I understand, she got into the relationship with Diddy when she was 22, and that's after she was already in a relationship with another man, Ryan Leslie, right? I think from what I understand about her story, she came to New York. So she was grown enough to leave her mom's house. She was grown enough to pursue her dreams, start off modeling. So I'm pretty sure she had some experiences there. But she had the drive and the determination, but she was also very thirsty, from what I understand. And she got into a relationship with this older man, Ryan Leslie. And then when she met another mogul, that's opportunity there. So she got over in the opportunity with Diddy. But from what I also understand, Diddy wasn't the only one either. And she was trying to socially climb, which a lot of younger women do, which is, when you're young and you're in pursuit of something, sometimes that happens. I'm not going to judge her for that, but I am going to say I don't think she wanted to give up her lifestyle. I think when people throw around the word Stockholm syndrome, you have to understand a lot of those situations, and even the first one, Patty, or the one that they always cite, Patty Hearst, right? Patty Hearst was kidnapped by SLA, I think it was called, the Lebanese army, and she ended up, they ended up brainwashing her with their ideology. They were like a cult, and basically they brainwashed her, and she ended up fighting for their side. Cassie wasn't kidnapped. Cassie had even though they saying Diddy was powerful, possibly dangerous, violent, she did have outs, just like she got out with her trainer. Okay, I'm done with this situation. I'm gonna go to my trainer. Now we're gonna use this and get this payout, which she did. They saved it for the right time. Boom, boom, boom. I think she's very calculated. Is what I'm saying, and you'll find that with a lot of the younger girls today. They're not as malleable as they may come off, but they are opportunists.
All right,
Okay.
so
Can we do a little back and forth for the last few minutes? My bad.
And I would, but I definitely got to get to the
Yeah.
last one. So just real quick, I understand everybody has some great points right there, but again, this is why these conversations, these debates are very important. Because not everybody sees this trial the same way. Not everybody agrees that this is Diddy's fault wholeheartedly. Or Cassie might play a role, she might not. She could have been dealing with Stockholm's. So there's a lot of subjective ideology, reason why debates and channels like this needs to happen, so we can actually understand that there's multiple perspectives, and it doesn't have to cause separation. It just needs to create a foundation for equal understanding. So based on that, let's just get to day 5 and we'll keep it moving, and we'll try to finish it off real quick. Day 5, emotional testimony, settlements, and evidence. So pretty much Cassie broke down saying that she'd give back the 20 million. Damn, I ain't know she said that. I wrote this and even though I wrote that. Give back the 20 million. Shit.
What?
Hold on. She'll give it back if
What
it
is she
meant
crazy?
never. Yeah, she said she'll give it back if it meant it never having to participate in freak offs. Well, you're not going to have to participate in them anymore. So
Okay.
just give the money back, right?
Well, dang,
No, I don't think she meant it like
That
that.
ain't fair.
That's not what she meant.
Nah, that ain't fair.
Special Agent Yasin Binda testified about finding baby oil and drugs during Combs' arrest. Don Richard described witnessing Combs attack Cassie in 2009. So real quick logic, how should the court balance emotional testimony with strict legal standards of evidence?
Whew, I know, man. That's why I never want to be on a jury on no cases like this, because that shit tough. But it's you can't take emotion away from people, because I'm sure there's probably people sitting there like, I saw that video, he needs to go to jail, and that's technically not how it's supposed to go. You know what I'm saying? So they just gotta prove their case, man. And that's like when Sandra brought up Zimmerman. Zimmerman like boils my blood, and it's like I barely want to be like, I get why he got off, but it pisses me off because he should not have got off. If I was on that jury, it would have been hung. Like, I'm sorry. So if I could think like that, other people probably could think like that too. But they just got to prove their case, man. They have to prove it. To me, I think they're doing a good job. I think people are getting lost in the sauce, though. I think they're doing a good job, though.
Okay. Bernadette, with so much of the case hinging on witness testimony, how should the jury weigh the credibility of people from Combs' inner circle versus outsiders? And let's try to make it quick, but yeah.
The inner circle is going to be the most credible. People that was actually there, that was standing next to him, that have maybe firsthand or even evidence that's objective. They're going to be the ones that are going to have the best testimony. Outsiders are just he say, she say, or whatever. But I think the inside circle should be weighed more, with more validity than the outside people.
All right,
Yeah.
Sandra, how significant is the physical evidence of how significant is this physical evidence to the RICO and trafficking charges, or does it risk centralizing the case? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, how important is this physical evidence that they say they have that we haven't really seen?
Well, I think once you present, baby oils filled with ecstasy or whatever drugs, I don't even know how you do that, but I don't want to know. Okay? I don't want to know either. But, once you present evidence that shows that drugs were involved, especially in those quantities, then I do think it helps the case as far as like, like I said, it helps the case for a criminal organization because there's no way Diddy's doing all that on his own. He is not the one going and getting these products. So it's like that helps it, but it only helps it so far because they're not charging anybody else, or at least they're waiting to charge people. I don't know. But yeah, it can help, but like I said, they need to start bringing charges on other people that were involved because Diddy wasn't doing this by himself. There's no way, based on time and then being one singular person, there's no way that you were doing all of this on your own. And I don't believe that everyone was coerced the way that I believe Cassie was. I do think that there were people that were complicit in it and had a high standing similar to Diddy's, and they could operate on an even playing field and work together to create these insane freak offs and get videos of people doing crazy stuff so that you can use it against them. I think that this was a whole thing, but like I said, bring those charges to those other people that were involved.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna keep this thing moving so we can kind of wrap it up. Again, it was I think it's a great conversation. We're having a good time here, and I know we just got some time restraints, but overall, day 8, Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi's celebrity testimony and the RICO patterns is what they was kind of basing this around. So day 8 brought more focus on the Kid Cudi angle with allegations that Diddy tried to blow up Kid Cudi's car and other threats involving celebrities. The prosecution is trying to show a pattern of intimidation and control while the defense pushes back, framing these as personal disputes. Sandra, testimony has touched on alleged threats and violence involving Kid Cudi and other celebrities. How relevant do you think these allegations are to the overall RICO case? Do they demonstrate a pattern of criminal enterprise, or do they risk centralizing the trial?
I do think that they help the case. I do think they do because, because his business is partly, partly with the music industry, right? So if that is part of your business and, there's evidence of you coercing people, threatening people, getting dirt on people so you can use it against them, contracts like 10 albums, crazy things like that, then it all speaks to, like I said, that organization. But where other people getting charged? That's my only thing.
Okay. Lodges, the defense argues that the incidents that, like the Kid Cudi situations, are rooted in jealousy and personal disputes, not organized crime. In your view, how should the court distinguish between personal vendettas and actions that are that actually support a RICO charge?
I think two things could be true. I think it could be personal vendetta, but it also could literally be a fucking crime. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think even with Cassie, like, I think there's a level of like revenge to this, even with getting paid. But it wasn't her choice. She got subpoenaed. She had to show up. So, right. I think if she had a choice to not show up, she probably wouldn't have, to be completely honest. So,
based on that, could she have pled the fifth on any of the stuff she was stating, or, is it best that she spoke?
You plead well, I guess you can do it technically when you want, but usually you plead the fifth to not incriminate yourself, right?
Isn't she kind of incriminating herself on the stand about saying that
unless she truly believes that she wasn't willfully participating, but of course the defense is going to make it look like she was. But if she's like, I'm finna tell the truth because I know that maybe in retrospect she might have been like, yeah, come fuck me, but it's like she didn't really want to do that. You know what I'm saying? In retrospect. Now, I'm not saying you can take back consent later if you gave it then, but she's probably realizing like, I'm telling the truth and I was pressured into doing what I was doing at the time. But I don't know. Pleading the fifth just seems like you're just trying to let him get away with some shit when she doesn't have to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be her protecting him.
Yeah, it's like why would she has no reason to protect him. Yes, she got paid out, but this is totally separate from her getting paid out. So she doesn't have a reason to protect him in this situation.
All right, good statement. Joshua Graves said Cassie was doing it too at some point down the line. That's not saying she didn't start off as a victim. So
Yeah.
real quick, same thing with R. Kelly. R. Kelly was molested by his sister, cousin, family members, and he felt it was okay. He became he was started off as a victim and became the predator at some point, and no one gave him any leeway on that. So at some point, you have to start realizing that you are becoming a predator in your own victimization. So I just want to point that out. That was a good statement that you made, Joshua. One of the last questions I'm going to ask is Bernadette, with the testimony about Kid Cudi and other celebrities now part of the record, what impact do you think this has on the jury? Does it strengthen the prosecution's narrative of a pattern of intimidation and control, or could it distract from the core legal issues at stake?
No, I think they're doing a good job, to be honest, building and establishing a pattern of violent behavior. You know, we started off. We saw the Cassie video. We heard Cassie's testimony. We heard the mother. The mother actually, was up there testifying. Cassie's mom gave testimony of what she saw with her daughter. So they're laying the foundation to show that this is an insane person. Somebody that doesn't live by the law. He's not, treating people well. And so once they do that, then I believe that they're going to start establishing more of the RICO evidence. I think that's where we're going to go with this. So I think they're doing a good job laying their foundation. Um, but like I said, we're only on the third witness, I
Yeah.
think it is. So, I think we have a lot more to hear before you will hear, what he was really doing with those planes, or, the trafficking part, the drugs. I think we're going to get there, but they have to establish his personality and his character first. And I think that's what they're doing.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a good take. So let's open it up. Where do you all stand on the strength of the prosecution's RICO case overall versus the defense arguments about personal motives and relationships? What do you think the jury would struggle with most? And finally, what does this trial say about how we hold powerful figures accountable in today's society?
Who's going first?
Yeah.
Whoever, please, by all means,
Anybody?
Okay,
jump in.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle the prosecution is gonna face. I'm just like I said, it's still early, so we don't know, but it's just like I'm not seeing the other people's involvement, especially with no charges on other people. That's the biggest thing. But I think they laid out the what was it, the prostitution across state lines or some shit.
Yes.
Transportation for purposes of prostitution, sex trafficking by force. We're gonna have to see more for sex trafficking by force, because the transportation for purpose of prostitution, I think that's been clear. Sex trafficking by force, fraud is gonna take a little bit more. Cassie, I haven't seen anything that definitively makes me feel like, yes, he forced Cassie into everything. The beating her, though, we saw the bruises outside of not the video.
She's gotten paid for that. She's gotten paid for that.
No. The video is unrelated to the bruises she had. So
Mhm.
if
Separate
that
incidents.
so that's good evidence for being in a situation. Because I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. People are saying that Cassie she was there, she wanted it, blah blah blah, she was part. I don't know if there's a world where you can say that somebody that's getting beaten wants it. And I'm not talking about BDSM. Beaten and gashed and bruised and lumps and stitches. I don't know if anybody wants that. And it's hard for me to believe anybody that's seriously saying that Cassie participated willfully in most of it while having a gash on her eye. I just don't believe that whatsoever. So
Okay, all right. Now I'm not taking up for anybody, but I just want to point out real quick two things. How is it a crime? How is it a crime if I'm flying someone out to me for them to have sexual interactions with me? If they are providing me sexual services, it's no different than someone in the porn industry flying someone out to do a porn scene. I mean, maybe it's the difference. Maybe I don't know. How long, Sandra? I see you ready to go in. But and the next thing for me is also is that there's people out here with some freaky type sexual, situations that I can't even fathom. So I don't know if she likes to get her ass beat where she's bloody and like to spit on people with blood, or like I don't know. I don't know what her situation is, but for that to have happened and there was no gun to your head, there was no one locking you in rooms like R. Kelly was doing. You can't leave. You can't call your family member. You can't see your friends. That is hard for me to believe that she was stuck under some Stockholm syndrome and did not leave because she couldn't. So that's just my stance on that. But go ahead, Sandra and Bernadette.
Sandra, you want to go or?
Well,
Okay.
yeah. I'll make it real brief though. With what you said about what's the difference with prawn versus this. The difference is for the purposes of filming, something to send out to the people, because porn in a general sense is not illegal. So that's the difference. If you have the intent to film it and put it out there publicly for consumption on like X videos or whatever porn site,
And they're both getting
I
paid
don't know.
typically.
Yeah, so it's that's what makes it different. And it is a fine line, right? It is a fine line, but the line is there. Okay. Now you could say, well, they were filming it, but was it for the purposes of release? Is there a contract in place for that? Porn videos, most of the time, like they're gonna have a contract that is legally binding for that piece of work, right? They're gonna have a pay stub, right? It's gonna be on the books. So unless it's like, amateur, but that's where the difference would be.
Okay, Bernadette, how you want to close this out?
I just think that the public perception of Diddy was already there. I think with Jaguar Wright and a lot of these influencers coming forward, saying what they know and all of this before any of this even got started, there was a lot of predictive programming going on. So I think we already had this vision in our mind of how Diddy was. So that is going to play to the prosecution and everybody's public perception of Diddy, especially him being a Black man being prosecuted. And then you have people like Harvey Weinstein. You have all these people all over the film industry that have been known to be doing these things for years, even in the rock industry. I mean, we've had groupies, we've had underage girls, we've had drugs, all of these things for decades, right? But now we're seeing somebody go on trial. It happens to be a Black man. So there's going to be a lot of torn opinions, you know. But I do think that, like I said, I think the prosecution is doing a great job laying the foundation for their side. The defense is also painting him out to be a good person. They're trying, you know what I'm saying? They're trying. I've been paying attention to them too. So the truth is always somewhere in the middle, right? Because you have a lot of eyewitness things. So long story short, I just think Cassie, in the situation with Cassie, I don't think that she was necessarily trapped into doing what she was doing. But I do think they're going to have to prove to me, I think they're going to, sex trafficking is in this respect is so hard because these are grown people. If you're going to prosecute them, what about the sex workers? Are they going to get prosecuted? Who's pimping them out?
Well,
Are
pimping
they
is
going
illegal too, though. Pimping is
to
Right.
illegal.
And
so
that's
so
part.
are
And
they
that's
going
normally
to
that's normally part of sex trafficking. The person who's doing the sex trafficking has the prostitution.
Yeah,
in there too.
that's why I said I'm
Yeah.
like it's hard to. I'm not sold on the coercion of the sex trafficking. That's where I
The
need
sex
to see.
trafficking.
Yeah.
you would
Right.
have to show me that there were in fact people there against their will. They were drugged, and they were taken advantage of when they were, not conscious, and all these things that we've heard. There's still no real solid evidence. I don't know if we'll ever hear it. I don't know if we're actually going to hear it as the general public, but those things have to be put on the line because then that's that's a little different. And then
We got to wrap it up, unfortunately.
yeah,
But we'll
but all in all, we're still watching. We're still getting our opinions together based on the
indeed,
evidence that's presented.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
There's
Well,
one
listen.
thing I wanted to say though.
All right, real quick,
As far as I'll make it real quick, but as far as like Cassie being held against her will, I know they're not using the video, but you know, him taking her phone and things like that.
Mm.
That is part of holding someone against their will.
That's
And
a good
so just because I saw that one instance on camera, how many instances were not on camera? You know, so it's hard to say that she for sure wasn't held against her will just because we see an instance of him trying to hold her against her will by keeping her phones, by keeping her belongings.
And
Okay,
being
that is
beaten.
part of it. And being beaten, yeah, and being
Now,
beaten. So
listen, great point there. Honestly, I think that's a great way to lead off and leave people thinking about this overall conversation. So again, with all that being said, thank you, Sandra, Logix, Bernadette, for your insight and honesty tonight. This trial is far from over, and honestly, we'll keep following it. You know, this is a good segue if we want to start covering this conversation individually. We can meet up again and have a deeper discussion as it moves forward in the trial. But to our listeners, please stay tuned, keep questioning, and remember, the truth is rarely simple, especially in the world of celebrity and power. So, by all means, jump in that comment section. Make sure y'all hit that like button, that subscribe button. And I appreciate you all for helping me tonight on the channel. All facts, no bull. Until next time, y'all have a great one.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.
Oh yeah, most
Appreciate
definitely.
you.
It was wonderful.
deuces.
Oh, nigga, don't hate
This
me
was
because I'm
fun.
beautiful, nigga.
Okay, we
Man, you
figured.
got all that fancy shit, man.
Many men wish death upon me.